One afternoon, he walked up to a massive, flourishing tree and suddenly discovered a strange door embedded in its trunk. He was puzzled. Why would there be a door on the trunk of such a giant tree? Filled with curiosity, he cautiously reached out and touched the mysterious door. The door slowly creaked open, and in that instant, countless cold eyes from within fixated on him, as though an endless abyss was staring him down. From within, dark mist oozed out, turning into hands that reached out, fierce and relentless, as if they had a will of their own. Fear consumed him in an instant. He spun around and ran for his life, not a moment's hesitation. As he ran, he cried out in desperation, "Help! Monsters are chasing me!" Leaping from the soft grass onto the solid concrete, he could feel the claws of various creatures stretching toward him, as if monsters from different realms were in hot pursuit. At that very moment, a dragon, glowing with brilliant golden light, flew toward him with incredible speed. He screamed ahead, "Run! The monsters are coming!" And then, in a flash, the golden dragon shot into his body. He suddenly woke up, his hands reaching forward as he unconsciously shouted, "Run!" His mother, sitting beside him, saw him sit up and, uncertain, softly called his name, Hyun. Hearing her voice, he muttered, "Mom." His mother immediately hugged him tightly, tears flooding her eyes as she cried, "Hyun, you're finally awake. You've been unconscious for 3 months. We thought you might never wake up." He looked up at his mother's head and asked, "Forget about that for now, Mom. What's that on your head?" His mother was confused, not understanding what he meant. He pointed to the strange symbols above her head and said, "It's this here." With a simple gesture, he pointed at the symbols, and they instantly transformed into the word "Mom" in glowing letters. The sudden change left him utterly amazed. His mother, still in shock, said, "I need to tell your father that you're awake. He's still with your sister." He asked in surprise, what happened to Xiaohua? It turned out that 3 months ago, countless monsters suddenly appeared, attacking and injuring many people. Both he and his sister were attacked by these monsters. He leaned against the glass of his sister's hospital room, softly murmuring, 3 months ago. That was around the time I touched that strange door, wasn't it? Could it be that those monsters were released by me? The thought struck him like a cold dagger, leaving him stunned. Seeing the fear on his face, his father quickly tried to reassure him. "What are you talking about? Those monsters appeared all over the world. How could you have released them?" When he heard "all over the world," his shock deepened even further. His father then showed him some news reports and videos he had found on his phone. In one of the videos, a reporter was saying, "Another door has appeared in Galleria. The arriving walkers are trying to push the monsters back into the door. Walkers keep fighting." It seemed like victory was near. The monsters would soon be pushed back through the door. His father sighed and said, "Similar events are happening all around the world right now." He then asked curiously, "Who are the walkers?" His father explained, "They're the people who appeared alongside the monsters. They were ordinary people at first, but somehow they gained the ability to fight against the monsters. We call them walkers, probably inspired by the legendary son, Wukong, who slays demons. Right now, the world is depending on them." At that moment, a nurse hurried over and asked, "Are you the family of Bed 10? Have you gathered the money for the fees?" His father hesitated and apologized. "Can we wait a few more days? We're still trying to borrow money." The nurse, looking troubled, said, "The hospital is running low on resources and many patients are waiting for beds. Could you please hurry?" After the nurse left, he anxiously asked, "Dad, is it that we don't have enough money for my sister's treatment?" His father sighed deeply and replied, "The monster attacks destroyed many buildings, including ours. Now, we're living in a government shelter and we've lost everything." His mother, in tears, added, "They said if we can't pay the fees soon, they'll force us to discharge. But with Xiaohua like this," his heart tightened with fear as he thought to himself, "Does this mean my sister has no hope? She barely survived the monster attack. How could they just give up on her now?" Suddenly, he was jolted by the appearance of an arrow right in front of him. He walked towards the direction of the arrow, but his mother's worried voice called out behind him, "Hyun, where are you going?" He turned back and realized that neither of his parents seemed to see the arrow, just like the strange symbols above their heads. He casually replied, "I'm just going for a walk over there." His father gently took his mother's hand and said, "Let Hyun be for a while. He's struggling too." He followed the arrow's direction, walking steadily forward. The arrow pointed to the nurse. As he walked towards her, she noticed and kindly said, "Rest well. If you need anything, just press the bell and let me know." Looking at the arrow, he wondered, what does this mean? Am I supposed to go talk to her? He saw the word nurse flashing above her head, and when she noticed him standing there, she smiled and asked, "Hi, is there anything I can help you with?" He felt like he was going through some sort of tutorial, carefully following the steps as if guided. Seeing that he hadn't said anything, the nurse continued, "Do you need anything?" He panicked a little, realizing he didn't know the purpose of the arrow, and nervously asked, I was wondering if there's any way to reduce my sister's medical fees." The nurse immediately turned away and responded coldly, "Sorry, if your family can't afford the treatment, we'll have to move your sister out of the ICU. There are many other patients waiting for beds." The nurse's cold attitude and tone made him feel furious. He shouted angrily, "Is it all about the money for you? This is a human life. You're just going to give up on her like that? What happened to saving lives and healing the sick? Isn't that your duty as doctors?" The nurse's tears welled up as she turned away, and with a tone full of frustration, she said, "We don't want this either. Do you even see what's happening in the world? So many people have died. So much has been destroyed. There's a shortage of medicines and doctors. The hospital's scrambling to raise funds, but there's no money to treat you. I just started my training in medical school. I haven't even learned anything yet, and here I am, just helping out as an intern." Seeing the nurse losing control of her emotions, he felt helpless and quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to blame you." Through her tears, the nurse said, "My father was injured too, and we don't have the money to treat him either. It's all those monsters' fault." He sighed helplessly and muttered, "Sigh, no money, no medicine. What are we supposed to do?" The nurse, with a hint of wistfulness, replied, "If only I could become a walker. I've heard that the doors don't just lead to medicine, but all kinds of valuable things. Only walkers can access them." He grabbed her arms, his voice full of excitement. "Really? Then I want to become a walker too." The nurse flatly said, "It's not that easy. I wish I could, but after testing, I don't have the ability." She paused and added, "I still have many patients waiting. I need to go now." Turning, she started to leave. Seeing her leave, he quickly said, "I'm sorry about earlier. I didn't even ask your name." The nurse smiled understandingly, replying softly, "I'm Chi-Chi. Don't worry about it. I don't blame you. Everyone's emotions are all over the place right now." At that moment, he was shocked to see that the words above her head had changed to Chi-Chi. Moreover, there was a panel showing her attribute, Healing 0. He was about to call out to Chi-Chi, but by then, she had already walked far away and the panel disappeared. He realized that if he moved too far, he couldn't see the panel above her head anymore. Suddenly, a thought struck him. Chi-Chi mentioned a test. Does that mean there's a place where one can test to become a walker? If that's the case, I should go look for it. Just then, he heard a familiar scream. Without hesitation, he ran toward the source of the sound. When he arrived, he found a family member of a patient shouting angrily, "I told you to save him. My brother can't just die like this." The family member grabbed Chi-Chi's hand and yelled, "If you can't save my brother, then you'll pay." Chi-Chi, panic-stricken, explained, "But he was already dead when he was brought in. There's nothing we can do." Suddenly, another family member pulled out a sharp knife and pointed it at Chi-Chi, growling, "Stop making excuses." Without thinking, he charged forward and forcefully knocked the knife out of the man's hand. The man angrily tried to grab the knife, but he shouted loudly, "If you keep this up, I'll call the police." The man's lips curled into a cold smirk, his eyes gleaming with a ruthless light. "Now, who else do you think can save you?" A female doctor ran in urgently, shouting as she moved, "Get the orthopedic doctor! Hurry up!" But before she could finish, the patient's family member snapped impatiently. "What the hell for? I don't have a broken bone." Just then, two male doctors approached, their steps steady and their gazes calm and composed. One of them casually raised his arm, scanning the room before smirking. "Who's causing trouble here?" The female doctor pointed at the two family members who had been making a scene just moments ago. Their confidence instantly evaporated, and they stood frozen in place. The next second, the two men bolted, their wails fading into the distance, as if the whole commotion had never happened. One of the male doctors scoffed, his tone dripping with disdain. "Humph, they were just trying to scam us. Who knows where they even got that corpse from?" The female doctor chuckled and said gratefully, "Thanks, old Li Xiaozhou. When things get out of hand, we can always count on orthopedics." At that moment, he suddenly noticed that Chi-Chi's arm seemed injured, and his brows furrowed slightly. "Chi-Chi, are you okay?" she asked with concern. Chi-Chi forced a faint smile. I'm fine, don't worry. I need to check on my patients. Before she even finished speaking, Chi-Chi had already turned swiftly and walked away in a hurry, as if trying to hide her injury from others. He wasn't convinced and quickly caught up to her, his voice tinged with worry. Why are you lying? That wound needs to be treated. Chi-Chi lowered her voice and said, Keep it down. It's just a small wound, nothing serious. He was momentarily stunned, but then his eyes landed on the panel on the wall. The display screen flickered with a message. Congratulations. Companion rescue mission complete. Reward granted. Would you like to upgrade your companion? What does this mean? What does upgrade companion do? His curiosity got the better of him, and he tapped the upgrade button. Instantly, Chi-Chi's healing attribute jumped from 0 to 1, and a system notification echoed in his mind. At the same time, Chi-Chi's injured arm began to emit a soft green glow, an unusual light that caught both of their attention. As the glow slowly faded, Chi-Chi was stunned. She looked down and realized that the wound on her hand had completely vanished. He widened his eyes in disbelief. How did you do that? A sudden realization flashed through Chi-Chi's mind, and she whispered, This is the ability of a healing walker? He was still confused. Healing walker? What's that? Chi-Chi's eyes suddenly lit up as if she had grasped the key to the mystery. I saw it on TV before. Some walkers have healing abilities, and the effect looks just like what you did just now. Chi-Chi's voice trembled slightly, her eyes welling up with tears of shock and excitement. But the doctors told me I didn't have the potential to be a walker. So how did I suddenly become one? He froze, his heart pounding as an unbelievable thought crossed his mind. Could he really upgrade others? This seemed like an incredible ability, something beyond common sense. He smiled in relief. That's amazing. Congratulations. You're a walker now, too. He had been too excited just now, unconsciously moving his arm. A sharp pain made him instinctively touch his right forearm. Chi-Chi noticed his reaction and asked with concern, Did you get hurt just now? He downplayed it, saying, It's nothing, just bumped a bit. Hurts a little, that's all. At that moment, Chi-Chi suddenly stepped closer, swiftly grabbing his arm with a firm and decisive motion. His eyes widened in shock. What are you doing? He blurted out. She responded calmly, Don't move. Closing her eyes, she focused intensely, directing her energy as she precisely began to heal his arm, her expression concentrated and unwavering. A few minutes later, Chi-Chi wiped the sweat from her forehead and smiled. They are all done. He quickly put his jacket back on and touched his arm in amazement. The pain was completely gone. Excitedly, he said, It really doesn't hurt anymore. Walker abilities are incredible. Chi-Chi chuckled lightly, looking pleased. You seem exhausted. Are you okay? He lowered his head, feeling a warm sense of gratitude. Being able to help others, that's truly an amazing thing. As he watched Chi-Chi leave, he muttered to himself thoughtfully, Helping others, it really feels good. Then, his gaze unintentionally landed on his status panel, and he frowned in confusion. So, my level is also 1. Chi-Chi's panel showed a healing attribute, but mine just has a question mark. What does that mean? Whatever. He made up his mind. No matter what mystery lay behind this, at least this proved he could become a walker. He needed to test it to figure out exactly what he could do. He left the hospital, heading for the walker qualification test. Stepping outside, he took in the sight of the city. Ruined buildings, streets in disarray, and people struggling to clear the wreckage left behind by disaster. Suddenly, he understood why those thugs dared to act so brazenly in the streets. The whole city was in chaos, and there was no manpower to deal with scum like them. Just as he left the hospital, his mother anxiously chased after him. You just woke up. Where are you going? He casually made up an excuse. I'm just going back to grab some clean clothes. But deep down, he mocked himself. Lying just to sneak out? I really hope I actually have walker abilities. Eventually, he arrived at a large bus, the designated location for the walker qualification assessment. He stepped onto the old assessment vehicle, unable to shake the thought, was this so-called evaluation site really this sloppy? There wasn't even a proper setup. It looked more like a registration booth for a street vendor. Inside the dimly lit vehicle, a man sat slouched in the corner, exhaustion written all over his face. The dark circles under his eyes made it clear he hadn't rested properly in a long time. He looked up and spoke in a low, hoarse voice. Here for the walker qualification test. Hyun glanced around. The cramped space contained nothing but a single, simple-looking machine and a few worn-out chairs. It hardly seemed like an official evaluation center. Frowning, he hesitantly asked, "Is this really the place to assess walkers?" The man barely lifted his eyelids, his tone indifferent, almost mechanical. "Yeah, this is it. Put your hand here." He gestured toward the faintly glowing sensor on the machine. Seeing Hyun hesitate, the man added casually, "The gate incident only happened 3 months ago. Nothing is fully set up yet, including the evaluation sites. Just roll with it, don't overthink." Hyun mulled over that phrase. Asterisk asterisk gate incident asterisk asterisk. It was fitting. Taking a deep breath, he reached out and slowly placed his hand on the machine, his heartbeat quickening. However, the moment the scan began, the man's eyes suddenly widened as if he had noticed something unusual. He leaned in slightly, his expression complicated. Hyun noticed and asked, puzzled, "What? Is there a problem?" The man withdrew his gaze, fell silent for a moment, then let out a sigh and pressed the shutdown button on the device. His voice remained calm, but carried a trace of helplessness. "Sorry, but you're not a walker." "That's impossible." Hyun's head shot up in disbelief. I already have level 1. No, I mean, he caught himself just in time before revealing too much, but his frustration was obvious. The man wasn't surprised. He seemed used to this kind of reaction. His tone remained patient. "I understand how you feel. Many people believe they have the potential to be walkers, but most of the time, it's just wishful thinking." The harsh reality hit Hyun hard. Lowering his head, he stepped off the vehicle, a mix of emotions swirling inside him. Just as he took a few steps, he heard a few chuckles nearby. Looking up, he spotted 3 men standing at the street corner, grinning mockingly as they watched him. One of them, a man in a black leather jacket, strolled over and patted Hyun's shoulder with a smirk. "Hey kid, you want to be a walker? Join us." No need for that official crap. No qualifications, no experience required. Hyun blinked in surprise, pointing at himself uncertainly. "Me? But I was just told." The man waved him off dismissively, flashing a confident smile. "Don't worry about that. Walker qualifications? Total nonsense. Train a little, and you'll get there. I'll guide you, and I promise you'll have a bright future." Hyun frowned, still skeptical. "You guys are real walkers?" A curly-haired young man beside him laughed loudly. "Of course. Brother Lei here has loads of combat experience. Stick with him, and you won't waste time on pointless detours." That so-called assessment center? A bunch of useless bureaucrats relying on a busted machine to decide who's a walker? What a joke. Official procedures are all the same. Great at putting on a show, but completely useless in reality. Hyun lowered his gaze, his mind flashing back to Chi-Chi and everything he had experienced. He had awakened a walker ability, yet the machine couldn't detect it. Could the official tests really be unreliable? After a brief moment of thought, he made his decision. He would give a shot. With that, he stepped forward and followed the 3 men, embarking on an unknown journey. Hyun followed the 3 men through the winding alleys. The dim light barely illuminated the narrow path, and the damp walls were covered in moss. A musty smell lingered in the air, and their footsteps echoed eerily in the confined space, making the atmosphere feel even more oppressive. Back at the assessment site, the staff member watched them disappear into the night, his expression unreadable. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but hesitated. In the end, he simply sighed and lowered his head, returning to the data in his hands. After walking for an unknown amount of time, Hyun finally spotted something ahead, a strange door standing in a hidden corner. It was embedded in a crumbling wall, completely out of place, like a fissure leading to the unknown. The moment his gaze landed on the door, memories surged in his mind. His breathing quickened, and an icy chill crawled up his spine, making him instinctively step back. The leader of the group noticed and clapped him on the shoulder with a smirk. "Kid, don't tell me this is your first time seeing a door." Hyun forced out a chuckle, masking his unease, and nodded. "Yeah, first time." The man gave him a knowing smile, his tone casual. The doors discovered by the officials all get numbered. Some even have designated safe zones for certified walkers to explore. He gestured toward the unmarked door before them, the corner of his mouth curling up. "But this one, it doesn't have a number, which means the officials haven't found it yet. Everything inside belongs to us." 149. As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 men expertly drew their weapons. They took measured breaths, their movements suggesting they had done this many times before. Watching them, unease crept into Hyun's heart. Is this really okay? Isn't this illegal? The man scoffed, his tone laced with contempt as he shrugged. Illegal? The world's already in chaos. Who's enforcing laws? What laws? Don't worry, no one's watching places like this. Now let's move. Hyun was about to nod when something clicked in his mind. His face changed. Wait, I don't have anything. I don't even have a weapon. The leader slung an arm around Hyun's shoulder, giving his back a reassuring pat. Relax, you don't need any gear. Just stick with us, and I guarantee you'll be fine. With that, he half pushed Hyun forward, his grip firm. Not forceful, but making it clear he had already decided Hyun wouldn't refuse. Behind them, the other two men exchanged subtle, unreadable smirks, their gazes deep and calculating, like hunters watching prey walk straight into a trap. As they reached the door, the leader suddenly shoved Hyun forward with a grin. All right, kid, the honor of opening the door is all yours. Hyun froze slightly, a sliver of unease creeping into his chest. He glanced at them warily. Me? You want me to open it? The curly-haired man nodded, his tone casual yet firm. Newcomers always open the door first. That's the rule. Hyun frowned, a sinking feeling settling in his gut. Something didn't feel right. But with all three of them watching him closely, there was no escape. After a brief hesitation, he took a deep breath and slowly reached out, his fingers trembling as they touched the handle. The moment his skin made contact, a wave of familiar terror crashed over him. Just like last time, images from his previous encounter with a door surged in his mind. The countless eyes lurking in the darkness, the suffocating pressure, the overwhelming despair that made escape impossible. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to suppress the fear. If I want to be a walker, I can't keep running away. The next second, he gripped the handle and pressed down. Click, the door unlocked. A bone-chilling gust rushed out, and as it creaked open, his eyes widened in shock. The scene before him left him utterly speechless. The world behind the door was not as strange as one would expect. At least on the surface, it looked like an ordinary residential house. Just then, a bellowing voice came from outside the door, with anxiety and warning. Stop! You can't go in. The three of them almost subconsciously glanced at each other, and without hesitation, they pushed together with force, pushing Hyun into the room. The man in the lead glanced back at the door, a flirtatious smile on his face, as if he didn't give the man a second thought. In the next second, he casually brought his hand and closed the door with a bang. The staff member of the assessment office rushed to the door and reached out to push it, but found that the door was already closed and could not be opened. His face sank, and he cursed in a low voice, "Damn." Hyun inside the door looked back with hindsight and asked with a frown, "Did that person just tell us not to come in?" One of the men, however, waved his hand, his tone careless. "Leave him alone." Hyun was still uneasy, his eyes flickered a little. "But he seems to be an official person, right?" The man in the lead snorted, his eyes cold. "If you want to listen to him, you shouldn't have come here. He said that you don't have the qualifications of a walker, right?" These words silenced Hyun instantly. He didn't know how to retort for a moment. His lips moved slightly, and he ultimately didn't speak. The curly-haired man next to him saw the situation, took Hyun's shoulders, and smiled meaningfully. "Don't think too much. Since you follow Brother Lazy to mix, then listen to Brother Lazy." The bald man walking in the forefront suddenly stopped. A trace of suspicion surfaced on his face. "You guys look. That doesn't seem to be right." The crowd followed his gaze, only to find at the depth of the room, can vaguely see a group of people. They were as still as statues, each one maintaining a certain twisted posture, their faces frozen with expressions of horror, as if at a certain moment they had been frozen in this moment by some unknown force. Hyun's heart sank violently. Those people, they had been petrified. The bald man's throat knots rolled a bit, his voice trembled a little. "Lazy, brother. What is this situation? I haven't seen it before." Lazy frowned, coldly scolded. "What's the panic? You've only opened a few doors. The situation inside the door varies. There's nothing to make a fuss about." However, he soon realized an even more difficult problem. The passageway was blocked by these petrified people, and it was impossible to move on. His eyes turned cold, and he said in a deep voice, "This place is blocked. Look for other entrances." The crowd dispersed in response, each searching for a new passageway. Meanwhile, Hyun's mood gradually grew heavy. He originally thought that the world inside the door would be like a game copy, with a single monster that he could pick up equipment and leave after fighting it. But the scene in front of him told him that things were far from that simple. He pushed open a door, and the sight inside made him hold his breath. It was a neat dining room, warmly lit, with several plates of unfinished meals on the wooden table, while on the main seat, a family of 3 was seated. They seemed to be eating, their movements were still at the last moment. Their skin had turned grayish white, and their bodies were stiff like some kind of statue, frozen in time in this never-ending dinner. The curly-haired man swept a glance at the petrified family of 3 and said in a casual tone, "This should be the phenomenon of spatial fusion. The world and the gate will be like this from time to time. But humans being fused, this is the first time I've seen it." The bald man frowned and muttered in a low voice, "Brother Lazy, this door today seems to be not quite the same as in the past. There won't be a problem, right?" Lazy smiled disdainfully, his tone confident. "What are you afraid of? The principle is still the same. According to the old rules, what to do. Saying this, he reached out and pushed open another door, and an eerie green light immediately surged out from the room, swaying slightly and casting eerie shadows on the walls. Lazy's eyes lit up, his tone excited. "Found it." He beckoned towards Hai-Yun with a smile at the corner of his mouth. "Kid, here's something good for you." After saying that, he picked up a fist-sized green crystal from the room and casually handed it to Hai-Yun. "Here, this is a welcome gift for the newcomer." Hai-Yun received the crystal and was slightly stunned, and the moment his fingertips touched it, he felt a warm energy slowly flow into his palm. He looked up in confusion. "What is this?" The other 2 laughed, and the curly-haired man patted his shoulder. "Kid, haven't seen it before, have you? This is a healing crystal. Now, the hospital relies on this to cure the sick. You can't even buy it outside if you want to." The bald man grinned, his tone carrying a bit of teasing. "Brother Lazy has always been generous. Treating newcomers is just not the same. Take it. You'll just be happy." Hai-Yun looked down at the crystals in his hand, his heart bursting with joy, and hurriedly thanked Lazy. The bald man, however, grabbed his hand and stuffed the crystals directly into his pocket, patting his clothes. "Put it away. Don't drop it. It's worth a lot of money." Lazy looked around, and his eyes landed on a corner of the house, where clusters of crystals emitting green fluorescence were piled up. He pointed at the crystals and said meaningfully, "See those crystal clusters in there? Collect them all, and you won't lose any money on this trip. Sell them for a good price then, and split them equally." He turned his head to look at Hai-Yun and smiled meaningfully. "You're a newcomer. Contribute more. Starting from the inside and working outwards, each of us will be responsible for a section, and will be done in no time." Hai-Yun looked at the deep room. The green light inside was flooded with eerie fluctuations. Just looking at it made people shiver. He swallowed his saliva and asked somewhat nervously, "Brother Lazy, can I borrow a weapon?" Lazy waved his hand, full of concern. "Don't worry, where there is this kind of crystal cluster, there won't be any danger. You'll know when you go in." He took out a small communicator from his waist and handed it to Hai-Yun. "Keep the communicator with you. Call us if anything happens. Look, it's bright inside without even using lights." He pointed to the crystals that were flooding the room with light, smiled and patted Hai-Yun's back. "Go on. Don't be afraid." Hai-Yun looked at them, still somewhat hesitant. "Is it really?" "Okay." 196. The bald man laughed, his tone carrying some frivolity. "Ha! A newcomer is a newcomer. Look at how scared he is." The curly-haired man, on the other hand, shrugged his shoulders, his tone carrying a bit of flirtation. "Don't laugh at people. Newcomers don't understand. You have to teach Hai-Yun took a deep breath, stabilized his mind, and took a step towards the depths. He glanced back at a few people and said in a low voice, "That's fine. I'll go inside to collect and come back as soon as possible." When Hai-Yun's figure completely disappeared into the depths of the room, the corner of Lazy's mouth lifted slightly, his gaze grim. The bald man laughed in a low voice. "That kid didn't suspect anything, did he?" The curly-haired man shrugged his shoulders and said uncaringly, "Just a student boy. What can he know? He's a good liar." Lazy held the crystal that he had just handed to Hai-Yun and casually threw it away. The crystal rolled a few times on the ground, and its light slowly dimmed. He coldly swept a glance at the 2 people beside him, and his tone was low. "All throw away the crystals in your hands. Don't bring them with you." When the other 2 heard this, without saying a word, they immediately threw the crystals in their hands onto the ground casually. The smiles on their faces had disappeared. The bald man said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, Brother Lazy. Who doesn't know that carrying crystals is looking for death?" Hai-Yun picked up a piece of crystal stone, smiled slightly, and said to himself, Lazy brother's really good. Gave me a piece of crystal stone for nothing. This thing to take back. Should be able to cure Xiaohua. However, looking at the ghostly green light around him, a trace of uneasiness still rose in his heart. He murmured in a low voice, "It is said that there is no danger, but how does this place feel creepy?" Just as he bent down to pick up another crystal stone, his gaze unintentionally swept to a cluster of crystals in front of him beside a cluster of crystals. There, a strange shadow seemed to be erected. He subconsciously blinked, held his breath, and slowly approached. When he saw clearly what it was, he instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. It was a young girl, her entire body gray and white. Her skin as stiff as rock, maintaining an upright posture as if she had been framed as a statue in a moment of panic. Haiyan only felt his scalp numb and violently fell back a few steps, turned around and ran, almost tripping over the crystals on the ground. "Shit, scared me to death. This is too weird." He covered his chest, his heart beating so fast that it felt like it was going to pop out of his throat. He turned back and took another look at the young girl. His heart couldn't help but give birth to a trace of inexplicable sadness. It's too tragic. This girl originally should have stayed home properly, but now, not only is she dead, but she's also been fused into this ghostly place. He tightly bit his lower lip, and while walking forward, he looked down and pondered, "Is all this because of me? Because I opened that door?" Thinking about this, his heart sank, and cold sweat seeped out of his back. Just at this moment, in the silent space, suddenly resounded a subtle click sound. It was as if something had loosened. Haiyan's body stiffened, and his heartbeat instantly missed a beat. He took a deep breath, and with courage, he slowly turned back to look at. In the next second, his eyes widened violently, and his breathing stopped abruptly. The young girl, who had been petrified, was staggering towards him. This scene caused Haiyan's pupils to shrink and his bones to creep out, and he took a violent step backwards, screaming out of control, "Ah!" But before he could regain his senses, the petrified girl suddenly leaned forward, and as if she had lost her center of gravity, her entire body lunged towards him in a swooping position. "Shit!" Haiyan's face turned pale as he immediately turned around and ran wildly while desperately yelling, "Help!" His heartbeat was almost on the verge of exploding as he stumbled on his feet and rushed towards the entrance. But the young girl's speed was far faster than he had imagined, her feet dragging on the ground with ear-piercing friction sounds as she drew closer and closer to him. On the other hand, on Lazy's intercom, Haiyan's terrified cries for help came. "Brother Lazy, quickly save me. There's something alive here." However, upon hearing this, Lazy only faintly hooked up the corner of his mouth. His tone of voice was horribly calm. "It's starting." His eyes were cold, and he did not have any intention of going to the rescue. Instead, he signaled the other two, each looking for cover and hiding. Lazy himself silently hid behind the wooden crate, observing the movements at the cave entrance. Suddenly, a low-frequency, resonating sound of buzzing came from the depths of the cave entrance, as if some kind of sleeping being had been awakened. At the very moment of this sound, the petrified people scattered outside the cave began to move slowly, began to slowly squeeze towards the cave entrance. Without hesitation, the three lazy people ran wildly in the opposite direction of the cave entrance, their figures quickly disappearing into the shadows. They didn't look back, didn't pause, as if they already knew what would happen behind them. After passing through several dimly lit passages, they stopped in front of a worn wooden door. Lazy reached out and pushed it. The door panel made a slight creaking sound and slowly opened. Behind the door, a dazzling green light instantly illuminated their faces. Huge clusters of crystals grew upwards from the ground, the smooth crystals reflecting countless flowing rays of light, like an unexplored treasure mine. Lazy's eyes widened, and a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. "This time it's rich. This door is full of treasures. Quickly do it. Take as much as you can." The three of them excitedly rushed in, quickly pulling out their weapons and slamming them against the crystal clusters. Crunching sounds echoed in the air, and crystal fragments splattered in all directions. Meanwhile, Haiyan was still running wildly inside the cave, his footsteps messy and his breathing rapid. He rushed through several winding stone walls, finally stopping in front of a huge tree, his heart beating wildly. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked around warily, thinking anxiously in his heart. Which way should I run now? Which way to stay alive? He took a deep breath, looked toward a slightly more spacious passageway to his left, and gritted his teeth and decided, whatever, this way. However, just as he was about to take a step, a low sound of footsteps suddenly sounded ahead. A stiff figure was slowly squeezing into the cavern, and those who were petrified actually began to move. Hyen fiercely stared with wide eyes and sucked in a breath of cool air. What the hell is this? The petrified people's movements were stiff and slow, yet their arms reached out in unison towards Hyen's direction. Hyen could only feel his scalp tingling as he hastily took a step back, his heart beating frantically. But there was no way to retreat, and his back rested against the cold stone wall. Shit! With nothing else to do, he violently raised his leg and kicked away those arms reaching out to him. He looked down at the densely packed, petrified crowd at his feet, his heart beating like thunder. Can I beat them? Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. No, I'm a walker. I've awakened. I can't fight. But is it really possible with bare hands? He recalled the kick just now, although it could make the petrified person's limbs crack. The touch was harder than a stone, not at all like something that could be easily smashed. He gritted his teeth, violently pressed the communicator, and shouted, "Brother Lazy, where are you guys? I need weapons." However, in the other room, the walkie-talkie was being tossed aside, allowing Hyen's voice to keep echoing, with no one picking it up at all. Lazy's trio was currently filled with excitement as they filled their bags with crystals. Their eyes were only filled with the treasure in front of them, and they didn't care about Hyen in the slightest. Hurry up, hurry up. Lazy accelerated the movements of his hands, urging in an urgent tone. That weakling won't last long. We have to retreat quickly. The curly-haired man laughed as he loaded the crystals. But seriously, it's good luck this time. It's not often you get a deal this big. On the other end of the walkie-talkie came Lazy's and the others' unbridled jeers, and the curly-haired man's voice was tinged with sarcasm. Ha! Student boys are the best at cheating. You still think you're really some kind of walker? How dare you enter the door with something that hasn't even been measured by the assessment office? Serves him right for seeking his own death. Hyen stopped his steps violently, his body stiffening and his mind going blank. That had been lying to me from the beginning. The heart seemed to be clutched hard by an invisible hand, and cold despair instantly spread all over his body. He felt like the sky was about to collapse. He trembled as he raised the walkie-talkie and roared angrily. You guys even lied to me. His angry roar echoed in the empty cave, and it also unreservedly reached the ears of Lazy's three people. When Lazy heard this, a grim smile appeared on his face, and his tone was tinged with a sneer and ruthlessness. You only realize it now? It's already too late. In your next life, remember to be an obedient good boy. His voice was permeated with cold malice, as if he was pronouncing Hyen's death sentence. As soon as the words left his mouth, Lazy raised his foot and ruthlessly stepped on the intercom, and with a click, the communication was instantly cut off. On Hyen's side, there was a shrill noise of electric current in his earphone, and then he was completely silenced. His hands clenched his fists tightly, his nails pinched into his palms, and he angrily gritted his teeth and lowly roared, "Liars! These people don't know how many people have been killed. They are even more terrifying than monsters." His eyes lit up with angry flames, and the fear in his heart was gradually swallowed up by his anger. Just then, however, a rush of footsteps approached from behind. The petrified girl, catching up, his eyes searched around and finally found something worn out on the ground. A rusty folding stool. Will this thing work? There was no time to hesitate. The moment the petrified girl lunged towards him, he violently swung the folding stool and viciously smashed it into her head. Bang! The dull sound of the impact echoed in the cavern, and the maiden's body swayed, her footsteps suddenly becoming staggered. Seeing that it had an effect, Hyen's gaze suddenly sank. Roaring angrily, he violently erupted with a shocking aura, swinging the folding stool and smashing it frantically towards the petrified young girl. Bang! 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 A few moments later, the petrified girl's body finally cracked and crumbled into a pile of rubble with a loud bang. Hyen gasped for breath, sweat sliding down the corners of his forehead as he looked at the rubble on the ground, his eyes glittering with disbelief. He murmured in a low voice, I can defeat them. But before he could catch his breath, there was a sudden sound of clack, clack, clack from the depths of the cave. Countless petrified people were approaching him, But this time, he did not hesitate to raise the folding stool, his eyes firm, towards the nearest petrified person to smash. However, what shocked him was that this blow was completely ineffective. The folding stool smashed hard against the petrified person's body, but was bounced back hard, even making his arm numb. Ha-Yun's face changed, his heart beating wildly, and he violently turned around and ran. Why? Why can't you hit this time? The maiden just now could smash it. Why aren't these guys using it? His mind was thinking frantically, but the petrified people behind him were getting closer and closer, so he didn't have any time to come up with an answer. Suddenly, a petrified hand snapped out of the ground, sprang out of the shadows like a ghost, and violently grabbed his ankle. Soon, the group of petrified people caught up with him, their densely packed arms stretching out like vines, frantically grabbing at him. Immediately after that, his body was attacked from all sides, fists, palms, and elbows, falling like a torrential downpour, with each blow causing him to feel pain deep into his bones. His eyes fell on his right hand, and his pupils suddenly contracted. The marks of broken bones were clearly visible, and the pain was like an electric current exploding through his nerves. Worse still, his limbs seemed to be out of control, and his body was too stiff to move, as if he was imprisoned in the abyss of despair. Countless hands in front of him, once again towards him, distorted face, silent and indifferent petrified people, so that his heart gave birth to a deep sense of bewilderment and helplessness. However, at this moment, he was silent for a moment. The despair in his heart was dispersed by a stronger will. His body suddenly erupted with an astonishing power, and a blazing golden light emerged from his body, like a fiery flame tearing through the darkness. The moment the petrified man was about to touch him, he fiercely stomped on the ground, and a powerful recoil caused him to suddenly retreat several meters, pulling away from a safe distance. He looked down at his body and was shocked to find the wound had completely healed. He hurriedly checked the system panel and saw that his level had jumped from 1 to 2. The petrified man lunged again, and he instinctively dodged backwards, his movements even swifter than before. Just then, he was surprised to realize that his body had become much lighter, as if there was a strange force supporting him. What the hell was going on? But he had obviously done nothing, so why was he suddenly upgraded? Not caring to think deeply, he headed straight for the cave entrance and leapt down without hesitation. Rushed out of the cave at a very fast speed, the cold wind pounded on his face. He temporarily put aside all the doubts. The most important thing now was to live. What he did not expect, outside the cave, is still desperate. More petrified people densely surrounded, has been waiting for a long time. Seeing the situation is not good, he jumped up, his body like a fast wind swept through, thrillingly dodged the attack in front of him. Having successfully landed on the ground, he realized that he could no longer just run away. He had to find a way to counterattack, just as he had done earlier. However, when he tried to attack again, the magical power disappeared, and his attacks were no longer able to do any effective damage. As he dodged and dodged, he thought rapidly. What exactly was that feeling? He recalled that moment, recalled the burning emotion. At that moment, he was furious to the core. He leaned his back against the wall, panting slightly, his mind quickly going back before how exactly did he defeat that petrified girl. He closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing, allowing himself to recall the emotions. Anger he felt at the time. He began to try to stimulate his anger, and gradually a raging power actually did rise up in his body. He clenched his fists, his knuckles emitting a slight click sound. The surface of his body faintly exudes a hot aura, as if there are flames burning. He swung his fist violently and smashed it towards the nearest petrified person. Boom! The fist impacted with a loud bang, and the petrified man's body even instantly disintegrated, splattering debris everywhere and scattering like a broken statue. He froze for a moment, then was pleasantly surprised that the power within his body could actually break these monsters. However, in the next second, severe pain swept through him from deep within his arm. He sucked in a breath of cold air and looked down. His right fist had swollen up like a lump of bloated dough, bruised and purple. "Hey, don't use your fists to hit directly." A familiar voice suddenly came, followed by a figure quickly running to his side. He looked up in surprise and froze when he saw the visitor. "Are you the one from the assessment office?" The staff member stood beside him, leaning his back against him while alerting the petrified people around him, his tone calm and decisive. "Don't dawdle. Quickly find something to use as a weapon. Anything, anything, he repeated, somewhat bewildered. In the next second, the staff member pulled an ordinary fountain pen out of his pocket. When he saw this scene, his eyes widened in disbelief, only to see the staff member grip the fountain pen tightly and jab it forward. Click! The attacked petrified man actually instantly split in two, his body cracking from the center and turning into countless pieces that fell to the ground. Even a fountain pen can do that. He was so surprised that he couldn't speak for a moment, as if his three views had been completely turned upside down. Seeing him still froze, the staff roared, "Don't just look. Quickly find a weapon. I can't hold them all off by myself." He snapped back to his senses, his eyes quickly scanning around, desperately searching for something he could use to fight. Soon, his eyes stopped at the corner of the wall, a rusty kitchen knife, half buried in the cracks of the stone wall. He immediately rushed over, gripped the handle with one hand, and pulled it out as hard as he could, but the cleaver didn't move at all, as if it was embedded in the stone. He clenched his teeth, clenched his hands, took a deep breath, and exerted his whole body, but the knife still did not show any sign of loosening. He frowned, recalling how he had pulled the folding stool out of the cave. "What is the key?" Just then, the staff member behind him suddenly spoke, his tone sharp and firm. "Mobilize your emotions. Make your blood boil. Excitement, anger, fear. Release the adrenaline. Anger, fear, adrenaline." He repeated in a low voice, as if a light flashed in his mind. So it was. He gripped the chopper tightly and took a deep breath, trying to get his emotions up quickly. After a few moments, his body once again ignited with that familiar power, and the energy within him began to surge. The staff continued to guide. "Let your heart contract. Let your blood vessels expand. Imagine you're about to die dash." His eyes snapped open, his knuckles whitening from the exertion. Along with his heartbeat accelerating, the power in his body instantly reached its peak. Hiss! With a low roar, his hands fiercely exerted force. A sharp cold light cut through the air, and the kitchen knife was finally pulled out by him. He was ecstatic, but the staff didn't let him stop, his voice still full of oppression. "Don't relax. Continue to infuse this power into your weapon and make it a part of your body." Before the words left his mouth, a shadow suddenly approached dash bang. The staff member was viciously knocked to the ground by a petrified man. His eyes widened as he watched the petrified man's fist about to slam into him. His pupils slammed shut, but his body was unable to dodge. Watch out! At the critical moment, a blazing shadow swept by, holding a kitchen knife in his hand. Hai-Yun leapt up, and with a violent wind, he ruthlessly slashed towards the petrified man. The light of the knife was like electricity. As the blade fell, the petrified man's body instantly disintegrated, turning into countless pieces of stone and splattering in all directions. He steadily landed on the ground, protecting the staff behind him and firmly staring straight ahead at the petrified people swarming around him. The chopper swings. His speed grew faster and faster. Each time he struck out his blade, it carried a stern aura, and along with the splashes of broken stones, the petrified people in front of him were chopped into pieces one after another. This scene caused the staff to stare in shock. This kid actually did it. The air was filled with fine dust, and the ground was covered with broken stones, as if it had experienced a stormy massacre. Hai-Yun gasped violently, the chopper in his hand still tightly gripped, his arms slightly trembling. The continuous slashing had nearly exhausted his physical strength, but he knew that now was not the time to stop. The staff member took a deep breath and asked with a puzzled face, "You're not a walker. So why are you able to mobilize the abilities of a walker?" Hai-Yun froze. "Yeah, how the hell did he do that?" After a moment of silence, he laughed softly, his tone light. "I just thought I was a walker well. That's why I look for you to test." This sentence made the staff completely fall into contemplation. Could it be that the assessment was wrong? Or is he really some kind of special existence? Suddenly, a small click sound came from the ground. The staff's face changed, quickly backed up, and warned in a low voice, "Not good. These rebels are vibrating. There's too much energy here. They might be coming back to life. Hurry." The two no longer hesitated, pulling their legs out and running wildly in the direction of the doorway. Finally, they rushed out of the door and saw the light again. Just as they stood on their feet, Li Benhua immediately took out his communicator and looked grave. "Yes, I'll send you the coordinates. Move fast. The monsters inside are coming back to life. Visual level 40. They must be suppressed immediately." After hanging up, he turned his head to look at Hai-yun and said in a deep voice, "You wait with me for a little while longer. We must make sure that a walker arrives, or else this door will sooner or later lead to a big disaster." At this time, Hai-yun glimpsed Li Benhua bowing his head and writing something in his notebook, suddenly remembered something and asked curiously, "Is that fountain pen that you just used as a weapon?" Seeing Li Benhua nodding, he was even more puzzled and asked after him like a curious baby, "Can a fountain pen really be used as a weapon? Is it hiding some kind of mechanism?" The corner of Li Benhua's mouth slightly raised as he faintly explained, "Theoretically, anything can become a weapon. The difference only lies in the user's skill and the power that can be utilized." He paused and swept Hai-yun with a sharp glance. "This is the most basic common sense of a walker. But you don't know anything, and you dare to rashly break into that door." Being said this way, Hai-yun couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed, scratching his head and smiling a little heartily. Thanks to you. If it wasn't for you coming to my rescue, I'm afraid I wouldn't have had the life to come out." Li Benhua sighed deeply, as if he had long been surprised by this situation. He said in a solemn tone, "Those guys who specialize in tricking laymen into getting started are a bunch of downright villains." His eyes were deep, as if he recalled something. "When I sensed that something was wrong, it was already too late. Once someone enters the door, it is impossible to force it open from the outside." Hai-yun looked aghast and asked seriously, "May I ask, what is your name? Are you also a walker?" Li Benhua glanced at him and nodded casually. "Well, my name is Li Benhua, and I'm a walker, but I'm mainly in charge of clerical duties, so I don't carry a weapon." Just as the two were talking, an engine roar came from a black SUV that sped up and came to a sharp stop beside them. The door of the vehicle opened instantly, and several figures quickly jumped down and without hesitation sprinted in the direction of the door in a murderous manner. One of them hurriedly turned back and greeted Li Benhua. "Tough job. Leave the rest to us." Hai-yun's gaze, however, fell on the tops of these people's heads, their system panels. Among the four, the highest level was 45 and the lowest was 42, each of them far exceeding his strength. But when he subconsciously scanned Li Benhua's panel, his entire body froze. Level 60? A clerical walker's level was even higher than those combat walkers. Li Benhua patted his shoulder, his tone flat. Go back to the car. I'll test you again." A few moments later, the new measurement results appeared on the panel. Li Benhua frowned slightly and said thoughtfully, "Now look, at it you have indeed reached the standard of a walker. Although the rank is still very low, you have already taken the first step." Upon hearing these words, his eyes lit up and he asked excitedly, "Then am I qualified to formally join the walker organization?" Li Benhua stared at him with a meaningful gaze. "If I say no, you'll probably still go and risk your own life, right?" He was read through by the other party and awkwardly scratched his head, smiling. I won't be so adventurous again." Li Benhua pulled out a business card from his pocket and handed it to him, his tone solemn. "Report to the regular mission center. There is a special novice training department there." He paused and added, "If you're underage, remember to bring proof of your guardian's license." He took the business card and glanced down, realizing that Li Benhua's contact information was printed on it. "If you have any problems, you can contact me by phone." Li Benhua looked at him, his tone even more serious than earlier. "Promise me, don't joke with your life anymore." He felt the other party's concern, his heart slightly warmed, and solemnly nodded. "I know." Subsequently, he returned to the hospital. Standing at the entrance of the hospital, he looked at his wretched appearance and fell into a brief agony. "When I left the house, I said that I was going home to get clothes, and now I'm coming back. Covered in wounds, how am I going to explain this to Mom?" But soon, he shook off these worries, and his gaze became firm. He had to first determine whether this crystal, or not, was really a healing crystal. He quickly walked toward the guidance desk and anxiously asked, "May I ask where Chi-Chi is now?" As soon as his words fell, he happened to see Chi-Chi being pushed by the doctor, coming out of the hospital room. She was sitting in a wheelchair, her face slightly pale, but still wearing a smile. "Xiao Hai-yun, how did you get these injuries?" He wanted to ask about her first, but he was robbed to ask first and couldn't help but ask back, "Still talking about me? What's going on with you?" The doctor at the side shook his head and sighed, his tone tinged with a bit of helplessness. "This child suddenly awakened her walker ability today, and she's been going around treating patients all day long. And as a result, she's exhausted herself to the point of almost passing out." Chi-Chi waved her hand, signaling that she was fine, but soon her gaze lowered somewhat apologetically. Actually, I also want to try to save your sister, but my level is still too low to cure such a complicated disease. Hearing this, Haiyan didn't hesitate to pull out the crystals from his pocket, spreading his palm and handing it to her. Then take a look at this. They say it's a healing crystal. Can you use it? As soon as the words fell, the people around him looked at the crystals in his hands, and after a moment, voices of amazement rose and fell. Is this really a healing crystal? The doctor on the side sniffed and walked forward, fixed his eyes on it, and said in surprise, "This is indeed a healing crystal stone. The hospital was given a piece of it before, but it was used up a long time ago." He raised his head and looked at Hai-Yun with a burning gaze, his tone filled with undisguised curiosity. "Where did you get this? This kind of crystal is very rare these days, and our hospital can't even receive a single piece when we line up to apply for it." Facing everyone's gaze, Hai-Yun smiled somewhat embarrassedly. "Let's see if we can use it first, and we'll talk about the rest." Afterward, the female doctor carefully cupped the crystal stone and immediately turned around and walked quickly towards the specialized section, while Chi-Chi also wanted to follow. But he reached out and stopped Chi-Chi, his tone firm. "Don't go there first. You haven't recovered yourself yet. Heal yourself first." Chi-Chi sighed helplessly and shrugged. "I also want to but I can't take the power at all now. I don't know how long it will take to recover." Hearing this, he lowered his head and pondered for a moment, then said to Chi-Chi, "Wait a moment." After saying that, he quickly called up the system panel, and his fingers quickly tapped a few times, rummaging for something. Soon, he found an unread message in the system. After he tapped on it, a line appeared on the screen. "You have completed the first door quest. The reward has been issued. Do you want to upgrade for your companion?" He didn't hesitate to click upgrade. In a flash, Chi-Chi's body slowly levitated, and a warm green light spread out from her body, flowing like the life force. 368. The number on the system panel jumped for a moment and finally settled at 5. The number on the system panel jumped for a moment, finally settling at 5. Chi-Chi slowly landed on the ground, then gently leapt, her eyes flashing with surprise. "I suddenly feel powerful again." Seeing her regain her spirit, he also revealed a pleased smile. Before he could react, Chi-Chi had already said excitedly, "I think I can cure 10 more patients now." "Hey, you just recovered. Slow down." He rushed after her, afraid that she would tire herself out again. Just as he took a step to chase after her, he suddenly felt a coolness creeping up his spine. There are a pair of eyes that are staring at him, with a deadpan look. He turned around violently, only to see an all too familiar face, his mother. "Where have you been, you child?" His mother frowned, her tone full of worry. "Why did you get so dirty?" His mother's gaze fell on his tattered clothes, and she sucked in a sharp breath. "Oops, the clothes are torn. Have you been hurt? Wait, is this blood?" Seeing his mother's panicked expression, he quickly waved his hand to appease her. "Mom, it's fine, it's fine. That's not blood, it's stained paint. I fell at the construction site." It was not easy to pacify his mother. He sighed long and hard, and secretly said in his heart, "It seems that the plan after that will have to be slowed down." But he quickly clenched his fists, and a determined light lit up in his eyes. "However, now I have a goal. First, become a true walker. Second, find Lei Zi's gang of bastards and take revenge." Meanwhile, in her sister's hospital room, Little Flower lay quietly on the hospital bed. However, her eyes seemed to have a slight reaction. He and his parents instantly tensed up, staring at his sister's face with bated breath, afraid of missing any subtle changes. A few moments later, Little Flower's eyelashes fluttered slightly, and then slowly opened her eyes. Her voice was weak and soft, as if it was a candle flame swaying in the wind. "Mom." The mother's tears instantly welled up. She held Little Flower's hand tightly, her voice trembling. Little Flower, you're awake." The others also breathed a sigh of relief, their eyes filled with excitement and relief. The doctor immediately stepped forward and did a careful examination of Little Flower, then revealed a trace of a relaxed smile. "As of now, there are no more major problems. As long as you recuperate for a while longer, you will be able to fully recover." Little Flower opened her confused eyes and blinked gently, asking weakly, "Brother, what's wrong with me?" Haiyan breathed a sigh of relief and revealed an easy smile. "What else could be wrong? You're scaring us to death." Chi-Chi came over to the hospital bed and said with a smile, "Little sister, you have to thank your brother. He desperately broke into that door and brought back the healing crystals to save you. Little Flower was still a bit confused, trying to remember what happened before she passed out. She only remembered that day. She went to her brother's school to look for him. And then, she saw a monster with countless eyes. The horrifying image came to mind, making her shudder and her body involuntarily shrink. Seeing that she looked white and shivered, her parents hurriedly held her hand and gently comforted her. "Little Flower, don't be afraid. We are all here. Don't think about those things. Everything is over. It's safe now." Haiyun looked at his sister's trembling appearance. An unspeakable guilt welled up in his heart, lowered his head, and softly apologized. "I'm sorry." Xiaohua froze for a moment, not understanding why her brother suddenly apologized to her. He did not explain more, not wanting her to recall those horrible things, just said softly, "It's okay. In the future, brother will protect you and will never let you experience those horrible things again." Chi-Chi on the side also laughed and picked up, "Yeah, your brother's now a demon-slaying practitioner, super powerful." Little Flower was confused. "Walkers?" Dad couldn't help but smile and excitedly explained, "They're the ones who can destroy those demons and protect everyone from harm. There are already many walkers fighting now. They are the heroes of this era." Little Flower's eyes lit up and said excitedly, then, "I want to become a walker too." She proudly puffed out her chest and hummed, "If my stupid brother can be a walker, of course I can too. I'm much more powerful than him." Haiyun helplessly held his forehead and laughed bitterly. "Yeah, you're mostly better than me." After coming out of the hospital room, Chi-Chi patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Your sister seems to be in good spirits. You can rest easy." Haiyun took a long breath, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. "She is much stronger than I thought." She was. Chi-Chi tilted her head to look at him and asked with a smile, "So what's next? What are you going to do? Go to that mission center?" Haiyun nodded with a firm gaze. "Yes, I'm going to check it out. Li Binhua said that there's a formal training institute there, and I want to go and brush up on the basics of being a walker." He paused and turned his head to Chi-Chi. "Do you want to go as well?" Chi-Chi smiled bitterly and shook her head. "I also really want to go, but the hospital is short of manpower right now, so I don't dare to leave at all." She had a bright idea. Her eyes lit up, and she said with a smile, "Why don't you go and take my class for me? How about you come back and teach me?" He nodded briskly. "No problem. I'll ask the teacher over there, by the way, to see if there are any online teaching courses." 5. Having said that, he walked out of the hospital alone and took a step towards the Walker Mission Center. He looked down at the license Ming in his hand. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and he couldn't help but spit out in his heart, "Obviously, I'm already 18 years old, but I still have to make my mom sign this thing. There's no way. Who asked me to be 2 months short of adulthood?" Upon arriving at his destination, he looked up and saw an eye-catching neon sign hanging high above him, which clearly read, "Haichao Jia Market." He blinked, and then his eyes fell to the side. A small standing sign with a simple font that read, "Walker Mission Center." The corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and he couldn't help but lament in his heart. "This is it? Is it that casual? This place is just as casual as that blood donation truck raiding office." Stepping into the hall, his gaze was instantly shocked. "Wow, this is the mission center of the walkers." Shadows shuttled around, and the walkers in combat uniforms had an extraordinary aura, and everyone looked resolute and full of strength. However, just as he marveled, a burly figure blocked his way. He looked up and saw that there was a tall, dark-skinned man standing in front of him, and the other man was a good deal taller than him, and he could only see the other man below his shoulders. The man looked at him condescendingly, his voice low. "What is your business?" He was stunned by the oppressive feeling of the other party and stammered, "No, nothing." The burly black man narrowed his eyes, his tone even colder. "Nothing? Then what are you doing here? You know what this place is for, right?" The other party's aura was so strong that he instantly felt at a loss for words and stood hand and foot, not knowing how to answer. Just as he was embarrassed, a clear pop sound rang out, only to see a woman holding a stack of papers and slapping the black man hard on his back, with a hint of reproach in her tone. "Taishan, you're scaring people here again." The man who was hit hastily took a step back and waved his hand to explain, his tone dripping with a hint of embarrassment. "I didn't. I'm not. Just asking if he needs help." The woman glared at him, her tone serious. "Remember, you're the front desk. The front desk. Your job is to sit behind the information desk, not wander all over the lobby." Taishan skimmed his lips and reluctantly returned to his seat, muttering in a low voice, "This place is so cramped. Staying behind the counter is suffocating." The woman clasped her hands to her chest and continued to question, "And where's your uniform?" Taishan's eyes were a little evasive, carefully saying, the clothes are too small. I can't fit into them." The woman directly held her forehead, took a deep breath, and tried to keep her tone smooth. "Then at least put your tie on. Otherwise, who knows you're a front desk staff?" Taishan froze, obviously not expecting this request, but under the woman's stern gaze, he obediently produced a pink tie. He bowed his head, blushed slightly, and carefully tied the tie. The whole person looked extraordinarily naive and cute. Seeing Taishan, who was tying a pink tie and had a resigned face, he couldn't help but slander in his heart. Now it's even more creepy instead. The woman turned her gaze to him, and her tone was dry. "What are you here for?" Being stared at by her stern eyes, he actually had an illusion. It was even more frightening than the strong man just now. He swallowed and tried to calmly tell his situation in general. After listening to it, the woman raised her eyebrows, and her gaze was scrutinizing. "So, you didn't even know what was going on with the walkers, and you followed someone else through the door?" He spread his hands somewhat helplessly. "I was tricked into it. Luckily, I was saved by Mr. Li." The woman froze slightly and confirmed, "Li Benhua? So it was you that he saved." He also did not expect that this woman actually knew Li Benhua. The woman said faintly, "We worked together before, and then something happened. After that, he specialized in clerical duties." She glanced at him and seemed to remember something, with a hint of probing in her tone. "He mentioned to me about you. Rumor has it that you hadn't detected a walker value, but you went in and came out with one." He shrugged, feeling strange himself. "I don't really understand. Maybe it's because I worked out in the gate for a while and upgraded." The woman nodded thoughtfully. The systematic workouts and props do boost the walker values. But soon, her words changed and her tone became meaningful. "But it's not possible to directly make the value break through the threshold in such a short period of time." He frowned, feeling more and more that this matter was odd. "Then I don't know. I'm just a novice little white." "Ah." The woman laughed softly, her tone calm. "It's also true that since the open door incident, strange things have been occurring frequently, and there have been too many things that we can't explain." Her gaze looked off into the distance, as if she was thinking about something, before she said, "The walkers are now constantly gathering data to prepare for future battles." She paused and looked to him. "Of course, I will teach you newcomers all of this knowledge." After saying that, she pushed open a door, and inside was clearly a classroom. After entering the classroom, she swept a circle, her voice dry and undeniable. "All return to your seats. Class has begun." She then nodded towards Hai Yun, signaling him to find himself an empty seat. He casually found a seat in the classroom and sat down, preparing to adapt to this sudden classroom mode. But not long after, a trace of incongruity suddenly surfaced in his mind. "This Director Wu, how do I feel? Where I've seen?" Just as he was puzzled, the woman stood up to the podium, looked around, and then spoke. "Hello, everyone. My name is Wu Yuan, and I am her novice instructor." As soon as the words fell, Haiyan snapped his eyes wide open and exclaimed, "Oh, Wu Yuan? So it's you." When he came back to his senses, he violently covered his mouth, and his heart sank. Oh no. The other students in the classroom looked at him, and after a moment, burst into laughter. Wu Yuan, who was standing on the podium, narrowed his eyes slightly as he looked at him and asked, "Are you a student of Golden Rock High School?" He carefully nodded his head, his tone a little rushed. "Yes, I remember you. Gave us a chemistry class." Seeing Wu Yuan walk off the podium and head straight towards his seat, his fingers unconsciously jabbed at the table, nervous. Wu Yuan sat directly on his table, arms hugging his chest as he looked down on him, his tone carrying a few hints of playfulness. "That's right, I'm the chemistry teacher of Jinpeng High School. To remind you, don't just give your teacher a nickname." He immediately sat up straight and apologized earnestly. "I'm sorry, and it really wasn't me who started it." Wu Yuan narrowed her eyes and warned, "No one is allowed to call anyone names." After saying that, she stood up and said in a calm tone, "However, chemistry teacher is just my past identity. The current me is a walker. To be precise, I'm a spellcaster among the walkers." As soon as the words left her mouth, she gently raised her right hand, and her fingertips slightly moved. A small ball of fire jumped out of thin air. In the next moment, a hot red flame slowly rose from her right hand, while an ethereal blue energy appeared in her left hand, flowing like liquid. Two very different kinds of energy in her palm, surging, intertwined, each other collision, but did not annihilate each other. A moment later, the two groups of flames actually fused together, slowly deformed, turned into a winged firebird. The firebird violently took off into the air and rushed straight towards the students in the front row. The students exclaimed in shock and retreated, and there were even a few slow reactors who directly jumped up in fear. The scene was in chaos. He, on the other hand, stared wide-eyed, unable to stop his inner shock. So handsome. Wu Yuanquan withdrew her hand. The firebird slowly dissipated in midair. She looked around the circle. Her tone was bland. Jutsu, in fact, is the same as chemistry. It's all based on transformation and application at the atomic and molecular level. Once this sentence came out, several students were filled with confusion and couldn't help but speak. I thought this should be considered magic. Ms. Wu, when you explain it like this, how did it suddenly become so scientific? Wu Yuanquan smiled, his tone calm, but with a hint of seriousness. Don't just think it's funny. If you don't understand the nature of the walker ability, you can't truly control it. She continued, for example, one of the core conditions for the activation of a walker's ability is to control the burst of adrenaline. He looked at Wu Yuanquan, who was teaching earnestly on the podium, and a thought flashed through his mind. Let's see how many values Ms. Wu has. Attribute, Jutsu level, 52. He blinked and stared at the data on the system panel, his heart slightly startled. Teacher Wu's level was even lower than Li Benhua. Just at this moment, the system popped up a prompt dash, whether to join as a companion. His eyes lit up, and he didn't hesitate to click yes. After all, Mr. Wu is so powerful, of course he should be added. But his finger pressed on the yes button but found that. Did not move. His brows wrinkled, took a closer look, but found a line of small green letters below the button. Pre-quest, not completed, unable to add companion. He clicked on the details of the predecessor mission, and the system interface immediately jumped to display the mission content, obtaining the target's favorability. To gain Mr. Wu's goodwill, he instantly fell into meditation, thinking about how he could fulfill this condition. Just as he was meditating, all of a sudden, a cloud of ghostly blue substance appeared in front of his eyes, hovering in midair, glowing with a faint light. In the next second, the blue substance smashed straight onto his face. His entire body froze, completely unresponsive, and he was startled. A gloomy and cold aura came from the front. Wu Yuanquan clasped his hands to his chest, his gaze staring at him sorrowfully, his voice carrying a hint of danger. You're not listening to the lesson. What are you walking away from? She narrowed her eyes and snorted coldly. Are you an elementary school student? You can have so much fun with yourself. As soon as her words fell, the class instantly erupted into laughter. Some people laughed so hard that they slapped the table. Some people laughed so hard that they slumped directly onto their chairs, and there was even someone who almost knocked over the things on the table. Wu Yuanquan's eyes were stern as he spoke faintly. After class, you stay. He instantly felt that something big was wrong. Originally, there was a need to increase Wu Yuanquan's favorability, and now it seems that favorability is estimated to be good if it doesn't drop to a negative number. It's over. The difficulty of this mission has risen again,